Hello, welcome back to the No Dig Norfolk Gardener. Now, we had a really good harvest of our Maris Piper main crop potatoes, and I know there's quite a lot of people now that don't bother growing the main crop potato, and I can understand why, because they take up a lot of space and not everybody's got the space to devote to growing a main crop potato. But for myself, while I have the space, I'll always grow them. Now, I'm just going through these just to make sure that there's no diseases or nothing's rotting. And actually they're looking really, really good. And if you are going to grow main crop potatoes and you're going to store them like we do, then one thing I would always say is, you can see how big this sack is. I would only half fill them and have 4 or 5 sacks rather than 2 big full sacks. Because it really is a good idea that you do check these every few weeks and make sure that they are all right. And if you've got a big full sack, that's a lot of potatoes all in one go you've got to do. Now, I know it's silly logic, because whether they're in 2 bags or whether they're in 3 or 4, it's the same amount of potatoes. But I tell you what, it seems a lot quicker when you only tip this amount out and you have to look at them. But I'm glad to say all of ours are looking right. That's the last one. And yeah, if you do that every few weeks or so, these were harvested toward the end of July, weren't they? Beginning of August. So do that every few weeks. Because the other thing is that normally the one that's not very good will be right down there. And it's nestled away there, and it's spreading all its spores and rot and disease about, and it will eventually affect the rest of your potatoes in storage. Like I say, these are actually looking really quite good, so really pleased with that. However, it is not such the case with the potatoes in the tubs. Blight has struck.
Such a shame. They were looking so healthy.
And we have a failure of crops.
Drat is a polite way of putting how I feel.
Now, you remember that we planted these potatoes into these tubs, about towards the end of July, beginning of August, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they've been growing away really nicely. And
I think the last time we filmed them, which was probably about 3 weeks ago, the Charlotte were then coming into flower, weren't they? They were looking brilliant.
yes, they were. And it's such a shame. It's quite devastating.
Yeah.
And I know that blight has been quite prevalent in certain spots around the UK this year, because I know by the comments that you've sent me. And you can see the leaves have all gone. The stems haven't gone over and gone all mushy, so the conditions must have changed before that happened. Nonetheless, these are not going to grow any more. And of course, here in Norfolk, I don't know how the rest of you have found it in the country, here in the UK, but certainly here in Norfolk, it's been extremely warm, hot even, but it's also been a very damp summer. And that is ideal conditions for blight to spread. I also think we haven't helped ourselves looking at it by putting them here. You can see there's the fence to this side, there's the greenhouse to this side. We moved this cold frame to here round about the same time. So actually these are all,
Bit closely grouped together,
yeah,
maybe.
they're surrounded on all three sides, and there's only where Mrs. W is currently standing where there can be any air circulation. So I don't think that's helped either. I guess we better have a look and see if there was anything there.
You'd like to think there's some small ones, certainly as the Charlotte were about to flower, you'd think there'd be something.
And of course also what they actually look like. Because if blight does get down to the tuber, you can't eat them. You certainly can't store them. So let's see what is going on. So at the moment, whatever I can find, it does rather seem, as I suspected, they would be very, very tiny. If there is anything there.
Look, there's a little one. Oh no, that's the seed one.
That's the seed potato, Mrs. W.
I was getting excited then. Oh dear, you can't get the staff, Barry.
No. So you've actually never seen what stage the potato's life is after about 8 weeks. This is a good demonstration. And of course what we do know is that when we see them beginning to flower or send up its flower stalk, it's a good indication that there are potatoes there. Unfortunately, the blight struck before they got to really a good harvestable size. And that's about all that had happened, Mrs. W.
Yeah. Shame, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is a real shame.
Are very baby potatoes. But then you pay a lot for those in the supermarket. Look on the bright side. Find a silver lining. You pay more for baby potatoes in the supermarket.
That's true. They don't appear to have blight, do
No,
they?
they don't. No,
Actually,
they look
let's
quite
just
healthy.
get my knife out. Normally, if it's gone down to the tubers, you will have sort of brown spots all over them, and they won't be hard. These are still actually quite hard. And the other way to look at it is to cut one in half, and there would be brown in the middle, which would spread amongst the rest of the potato.
Well, there's nothing like that there, is there?
No.
Well, I think let's just go ahead and harvest the rest and...
Yeah, you're right. I think we'll have these up and we'll make use of them wherever we can as baby potatoes.
Yeah, yeah.
And as I often say to you all, you never have the perfect gardening year. Something, somewhere along the line, will go wrong. And actually, instead of being down about it, I do think to myself that, you know, the number of years that myself and Mrs. W have been growing our vegetables, this is actually the very first time that blight has struck.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yes, yeah. We've been so lucky in that respect,
Exactly.
haven't
So
we?
really,
Yeah.
we've been really lucky.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that see blight almost every year, aren't they? You know, and this is the first time it's happened to us. But I do think there are things that we can do to mitigate this next time. One thing I do want to say, I've said it before, but more now than ever, just think about what I have to say now. you'll very often read that, you know, you plant your first earlies toward the end of March, second earlies mid to late April, main crop late April into May. Don't do that. Don't do that. I planted our potatoes, the ones that were in the buckets earlier in the year, and the Maris Piper that were in the ground, all toward the end of March. First earlies, second earlies, and main crop.
They all went in at the same time, didn't they?
All went in at the same time.
Yeah.
Now think about this. If I'd have followed what most of us read, and I have planted our Maris Piper into the ground there, mid-May, that would have been 6 weeks on. So instead of a harvest in August, we'd have been harvesting them, or looking to harvest them now. They'd have all had blight.
Yeah. That's really... I hadn't even thought about it like that, but you're right, aren't you? Yeah.
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 Yeah. Don't think of them just as first early, second earlies and main crop. Think of them as weeks. Your first earlies, 12 weeks, maybe a little longer, but round about 12 weeks, you'll have potatoes there. Second earlies, 15 to 16 weeks, you have potatoes there ready to harvest. Main crop, 20 to 26 weeks, depending on the variety, and you'll have potatoes there. Now, I do appreciate that there are people that live here in the UK that you can't plant your potatoes like we can. We live in Zone 9A. So what that means to us is that our last average frost is around about April the 14th, mid-April. So we know that if we plant our potatoes out toward the end of March, 4 weeks' time, toward the end of April, they will have emerged, and we're not so likely to see frosts anymore. And anything we do see will be very minor, like a 0 or a 1 degree. It's not going to be the -5s or 6 or anything like that. So every now and again, of course, you get caught out. And I find around about every 8 to 9 years, maybe 10 years, there will be an occasion where we get a really harsh frost sometime in May. But all you really need to do then is to just cover the mover. Fleece the mover. Always have the fleece handy. It's great for your other vegetables anyway, but just have it handy that you can put them over those and protect them from those frosty conditions. Or of course, you can earth them up. Put some soil over them, or compost, whatever, to cover them up so that those young shoots don't get nipped by frost. The other thing is that you can decide not to grow main crop potatoes and just stick to first earlies, second earlies, or decide to grow those main crop and take your chances. But of course, not everything goes wrong. We thought we were going to struggle to get a harvest of all of these, given how late they went in. Still they're being harvested. In fact, Mrs. W sent me a picture the other day, not yesterday, the day before, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Monday, and today is Wednesday.
Where you'd harvested a whole trug full, hadn't you?
I had, and I had picked everything that I thought was of any, good size to harvest. And 2 days later, and we have had a lot of rain overnight as well, haven't we? But
yeah,
they're just so many, and they're all hanging from the top now. They're actually hitting Barry's head. They won't ever hit mine.
No.
Far too short.
So, yeah, we'll have our successes during the gardening year, and then we have those things that don't quite go so well. But, as you've heard me say before, there's always next year. If I actually had more room to grow more main crop potatoes, I actually would, just so that we had enough to see us through until early spring the following year, when they naturally want to sprout. But we don't have the room, so I grow as many as we can. We're really lucky around here in that we have well, several farm shops that are really quite close to us, don't we?
Yes, yeah. And they do sell nice potatoes, don't they?
Where we can buy organic potatoes. These runner beans are getting rather large as well, Mrs. W.
My freezer hasn't got a lot of space left in it, Barry. I'm giving them away to all friends and family.
So you can see, this has been one of our great successes.
Yes.
And again, been really lucky there, haven't we?
Really good.
Now, I do have a plan. We need to harvest the rest of those potatoes, but I'm going to plant some more. We had a few potatoes that were left over, and so I'm just going to go potluck, plant those into some tubs with some fresh compost. We'll let them grow away here until the first frosts start to arrive. I'm going to put them in our polytunnel, and hopefully by going in that polytunnel around about November time, there'll be enough warmth in there to keep them growing, and we'll still have something ready to harvest for Christmas.
Fingers crossed.
We'll let you know how that goes. So do keep coming back and watching us. We really do appreciate it. And I just wanted to say thanks for all your lovely comments on our last video. It really was quite lovely, wasn't it? See that you enjoyed the courgette lemon drizzle cake that Mrs. W made from Anita's recipe. And thank you once again, Anita, for sending us that. She has actually sent us a chocolate version. That looks quite good. As Mrs. W knows, I do like a bit of chocolate.
A bit of chocolate cake, yeah.
And I actually got Mrs. W to answer most of the comments that came in. So, which was really quite nice. And a lot of you said it's nice to see Mrs. W in front of the camera instead of behind. She's still quite reluctant to get in this side of it. She much prefers to be that side. But yeah, if you did like those sort of things, yeah, do stay tuned, because we have got some in the can, which we shall release over the coming weeks. Now, I do hope you have a good rest of the gardening week. We shall see you on the next one.